Remember those Sunday afternoons at Blue Skies? Bet you're all missing being on the hill this year. This was Sunday afternoon 18 years ago in 2002, and this is the Blue Skies Fiddle Orchestra, started 2 years before by Carolyn Stewart, who's here busy keeping everybody in time. Carolyn is one of the original Blue Skies Festival organizers. With a few others, she started Blue Skies in the community back in the 1990s. It began with a musical instrument lending library, but the Fiddle Orchestra was the first big and pretty high-profile project in the local community. Carolyn Stewart would go on to lead the orchestra for 10 years in total. A few weeks ago, we talked to Carolyn about how it all started.
I was in charge, pretty much, of Blue Skies in the community in those days. And every year we would have this one meeting that was a non-meeting. And I was encouraged by Aine Platinius to go ahead and ask. I'm not sure that she really thought anything would come of it, but I asked the group if they would consider supporting that. They said yes. I went out and scrounged up little kids. These were kids who needed instruments. They couldn't afford instruments, and they needed something in their lives. Well, maybe they didn't need it. Maybe I needed it. I don't know. But they came, and then that phenomenon that's happened in a lot of fiddle orchestras that I'm aware of, like kid-oriented ones, these parents have to drive them to the rehearsals. So that's how Lori started coming. You drive your kid there, well, what are you going to do for 2 hours in Charlotte Lake? It was pretty amazing. The community was right behind us because they were all seeing this was working, and the kids had something special to do, and they all loved fiddle music. You know, the old-timers and the parents.
Since the Fiddle Orchestra started, some things have changed. The orchestra now includes a lot more than just fiddles. The orchestra learns about 15 or 16 new tunes every year. Arrangements need to be written for those tunes, and separate parts written for each instrument. That's a fair amount of work, and after 20 years adds up to quite the accomplishment. It's a mix. Some pieces are accessible to beginners, and other pieces get more challenging, shall we say. Carolyn Stewart started the Fiddle Orchestra and got things going. After 10 years, she passed the orchestra on to a new director, Cindy McCall.
I recruited her to teach me how to play the fiddle because at the time around here, most of the fiddle players were fellas, and most of them played old-timey, and I didn't like either really very much. I liked more Celtic music or classical music, and I'd heard Carolyn play at the festival, and I liked her style of playing, and I wanted to have a female teacher, and so I reached out to her, and she was living in Kingston at the time, and eventually I recruited her to come to Perth. I kept bugging her. So we've had quite a bit of influence over each other in the last 20 years. And she taught me how to write music down and use finale, and then she taught me how to manage an orchestra, and she's always taught me how to be encouraging to young people and old people too. And I still reach out to her.
Cindy took the ball and has been running things for the past 10 years. And boy, have they been busy. Constantly doing concerts and shows around the whole area. And the big project 5 years ago was a trip to Prince Edward Island.
It was fabulous. We played almost every day, which was and we performed almost every day, which was unheard of for our little ragtag orchestra. And that's what we consider ourselves. We're very much a learning orchestra. We never aspired to be professionals. I personally never cared whether I did shows or not. I play entirely for myself, and enjoy the music that we make together. But it was the trip of a lifetime. It was wonderful. The orchestra improved tremendously. We also did workshops with local musicians, made some amazing connections with local musicians. Played in the festival, the Fiddle Festival, which was nerve-wracking, but a joy. And they liked us. Who knew?
To mark its 20th anniversary, Cindy McCall and the Fiddle Orchestra had big plans for this year. A reunion concert was planned of the 100 people who had passed through the orchestra over the past 2 decades. That concert had to be cancelled because of the pandemic shutdown.
Into an outlet there, I'm not sure if the power's turned on to it.
And we're putting on a performance for them. Right? We're performing for them. We want to give them their money.
Another thing that looked like it was going to be cancelled is that every year at Blue Skies, the Fiddle Orchestra, or sometimes the Square Dance Band, will play the Blue Skies Waltz. The Fiddle Orchestra wanted to make sure that this year was no different. So a number of the orchestra members came out to Cindy's a month ago and recorded their separate parts. It was a challenge, and there were a few laughs. Now, Don, how long have you been in the Fiddle Orchestra?
This is my 3rd year.
3rd year?
3rd year 3rd year since I picked up a fiddle. I've never played before.
Wow.
Yeah.
How's it been?
It's been a riot. I absolutely love it.
Everybody looks perfect in here.
I know. They love me.
To introduce the Blue Skies Waltz, we asked Carolyn Stewart to tell us how the waltz came to be.
Well, in 1995, Kirk Elliott had done the square dances a few times. And one of the things that kept arising was the fact that none of the fiddlers knew the same tunes. And so he decided to write a book that would have all the square dance tunes in it, that we, a beginning piece of it. And so it had reels and jigs and hornpipes and oldie goldies and the Blue Skies Waltz. So everything else at that time was part of the the general repertoire of the area. But the Blue Skies Waltz, Kirk wrote it. And he wrote it so much in the style of the area that, it was picked up right away as we all knew the feel of that. 5 years later, when the Blue Skies Orchestra began, sometime into the next 2 years, I started to try and teach it to the group. It was a little tough for the group because it was mostly beginners at that time. So one of the things that I had realized after a little bit of doing this orchestra was that harmony helped. Harmony made a difference in terms of how they heard things. More likely to be in tune if you could hear a harmony. And it just sounded better.
If this was not a virtual performance, a real performance, an ordinary person watching a performance would know that you're starting the performance and getting them to come in
Magoo
together.
would introduce me. I'd get on the stage. I would get my hands up here and get people's attention. And then I would get their eye contact, like I'm getting yours. And I would go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Do, 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 do. And then I would keep going. But I'm not going to because I want to actually be part of the performance, right?
Okay, all right.
It's the Blue Skies Waltz, and it's a beauty. And the most amazing thing is it's the perfect Ontario waltz that Kirk wrote. And when Carolyn wrote her harmony, she turned it into a Texas swing waltz, which is just boggles my mind to see those kind of traditions kind of mesh like that. And yeah, it's a beautiful tune. And whenever I play it, I just think of the final dance of the square dance at Blue Skies, and all these people, sweaty and hot and sticky from all that square dancing, waltzing around that field. It's just beautiful. Yeah, and I always think of Carolyn too, because yeah, it just makes me think of her. We've been very blessed.